Hi, I'm John Clayton. If you know me, you probably know that I was born on the west side of Manchester. So was St. Mary's Bank, America's first credit union. Today, I'm the executive director of the Manchester Historic Association, and our mission is to collect, preserve, and share Manchester history. St. Mary's Bank represents a remarkable part of that history. To tell the story of how America's first credit union got its start, we need to go all the way back to 1908, which proved to be a monumental year in American history. In fact, 1908 became known as the year that changed everything. Thomas Edison, speaking of 1908, said everything is possible. Achievements such as Wilbur Wright's 76-mile aerial flight and the production of Henry Ford's Model T motor car propelled America into the modern world. Here in Manchester, Monsignor Pierre Heavey was presiding over St. Marie's Church, and while he was naturally concerned with the spiritual well-being of his parishioners, he was also concerned about their financial well-being. You see, most of Monsignor Heavey's parishioners were French-Canadian immigrants. They came to Manchester by the thousands. They came to find work here in the Amoskeag Mills on the banks of the Merrimack River. They came with empty pockets, but with hearts full of hope. They worked 12 to 14-hour days under difficult conditions. Wages were meager, loans were hard to come by. Most banks weren't in business to serve people of modest means. So there were very few options for mill workers to gain access to affordable credit or to provide for their families' futures. Fortunately, they had Monsignor Heavey on their side. Mindful of his parishioners' plight, this indomitable parish priest found a friend in Alphonse Desjardins, a Quebec native who was gaining fame in Canada as the father of the North American credit union movement. Monsignor Heavey invited Desjardins to speak to his parish about forming a member-owned not-for-profit financial cooperative or credit union. And before Monsignor left the old College of St. Mary's Hall on Cartier Street, his flock had voted unanimously to create La Caisse Populaire St. Marie, or Bank of the People, St. Mary's. Just like that, America's first credit union was born on November 24th, 1908. The criteria for membership? According to the original bylaws, an applicant had to be honest, willing to meet his dues, sober, orderly in habit, and industrious. If you met those qualifications, and if you had the $5 it cost to purchase one share of stock, you would come here to the home of attorney Joseph Boivin. He was the first president and manager of St. Mary's Bank, and his dedication to serving people of modest means make him a legendary figure in the history of the credit union movement. In the beginning, you would only come here to Joseph Boivin's home in the evening. That's because the credit union's only employee assisting Boivin, Francois Holney, had a full-time day job with the fraternal insurance group known as l'Association Canado-American. That meant St. Mary's business had to wait until after supper, when Francois worked here. Of course, the mills ran on 2 shifts, sometimes 3, so St. Mary's Bank soon began daytime hours to accommodate the city's growing labor force. And just so you know, St. Mary's Bank wasn't just for mill workers. The credit union's original bylaws created a special program called the Economy of the Penny. It was a savings program designed for the kids in the many schools in the surrounding neighborhood. The Boivin home was located on the route the neighborhood children used to go back and forth to school. Children would meet Mrs. Boivin in the front parlor to deposit their pennies, nickels, or whatever money they had into an old tin box. Mrs. Boivin would then record each child's deposit in a ledger. While the pennies may have become dollars, St. Mary's Bank continues to encourage and promote youth financial education and encourages its youngest members to learn to save early in life and to establish money management skills that will last a lifetime. Times may have changed, but over the years, St. Mary's Bank has remained true to its core mission, providing affordable financial products and services to its members. It has helped members through difficult times, like the Great Depression. Thousands of banks failed during that financial collapse, yet St. Mary's Bank remained open, even during the bank holiday of 1933, when President Franklin Roosevelt closed all banks nationwide. And in 1935, When the bankruptcy of the Amoskeag Manufacturing Corporation threatened Manchester's economic future, St. Mary's Bank met the challenge. When several local banks failed during the economic turmoil of the 1990s, St. Mary's Bank didn't just survive, it thrived, as it does today. More than a century since its first beginnings, St. Mary's Bank has grown into a full-service financial institution serving a diverse population, as welcoming today as it was to the French-Canadian population at the turn of the last century. St. Mary's Bank meets financial needs through traditional banking services, sophisticated online services, and long-range financial planning. And St. Mary's Bank meets community needs through a robust volunteer and outreach program, as well as the Education Center that promotes financial literacy. Although St. Mary's Bank has come a long way from its early operations in the Bois-Vent home, its fundamental principles remain the same. Back in 1908, one share of capital stock cost just $5, and today, it costs no more to own a piece of St. Mary's Bank than it did in 1908. St. Mary's Bank. You know, there are thousands of credit unions in America with more than 100 million members, but only those who work or bank at St. Mary's Bank can say they're affiliated with the first credit union in America. And for the record, I'm not just telling the story, I'm a part of the story. In fact, I'm proud to say I'm a third-generation member of St. Mary's Bank, and speaking as something of a Manchester institution myself, it's an honor to be associated with the first credit union in America, St. Mary's Bank.